Hi there! A new season of Gunsmoke is upon us, featuring the Blade Titan. Its HP pool is increased by about 50% over Tusk Bestial, but the fight comes with more amplification to help you cut through it. As usual, we'll quickly run through the mechanics of the boss before discussing relevant team building considerations. The Blade Titan essentially has just one mechanic you need to play around, which necessitates that you designate two dolls to be the closest to and the farthest from the boss respectively. Initially, when you start the match, only the farthest position matters. As you can see from the starting tiles, they make up an inner and outer layer. The inner tiles have a distance of 4 to the boss, the outer tiles a distance of 5. Here, by only positioning Lewis in the outer layer, she becomes the farthest doll. If you have multiple characters at the same distance, the supporting character takes precedence. When you start the match, the boss will apply 4 stacks of a shield buff to itself and continues to do so every 2 turns. Each stack reduces the damage it receives by 10%, meaning 40% damage reduction at max stacks. The closest and farthest dolls are exempt from this damage reduction when they have a special buff. While the shield is active, all dolls on the field are affected by a movement debuff, reducing their movement range by as many tiles as shield stacks remain on the boss. Then, the farthest doll from the boss immediately receives the aforementioned special buff/debuff, which roots the doll in place but boosts its attack by 5% and allows it to bypass the boss's damage reduction. The boss will apply this buff at the same time as it applies the shield stacks to itself, which is to say every other round, and the effect can stack up to 3 times for a total attack bonus of 15%. Importantly, the dolls with this buff are able to shred the boss's shield with their attacks. Here, Vector makes her first attack. She has a tin soldier from Lewis attached, which follows up with its volley fire, counting as an attack from Lewis. Before QJ launches her support action, we can see that the volley fire indeed took off 1 stack of the shield buff. Note again that Lewis's damage bypasses the damage reduction because she currently holds a special buff, while the rest of the team hits into the shield. As the attack concludes, you can see that the global movement debuff was reduced by a stack as your shield got lowered. Given what you've seen so far, it should be clear that you generally want a doll in the farthest position who manages to do 4 attacks within the turn. Characters with high hit counts or support actions are well suited for the task. Here, Lewis was selected for the role since the attacks from her tin soldiers count as well. Additionally, her S2 adds a separate instance of fixed damage to the attack, making her shred 2 stacks of the shield with 1 skill. As you can see, the boss is down to a single stack, and the movement debuff is also lowered to a single tile. With Tololo's first attack and the following volley fire, the boss's shield stacks are gone. Instead, it now received a 25% defense reduction debuff. This defense reduction effect is applied every time 4 stacks of its shield are removed, stacking up to 3 times for a total reduction of 75%. The boss reapplies the shield every other round, so from turn 5 and onwards, you're able to essentially reduce the boss's defense to 0. At this point, the closest doll also receives the buff/debuff from the boss. This occurs whenever the shield is removed. Here, Tololo is the lucky one, so she gets rooted in place, but enjoys the stacking attack bonus. Now there are 2 dolls on the field that are able to bypass the damage reduction and shred the boss's shield stacks. As the turn ends, you can see that all dolls except for Tololo are in their starting positions. This is what it looked like before. Lewis was rooted in place, and Tololo moved forward to become the closest target for the boss. If Tololo had not moved forward, all dolls except Lewis would have been at the same distance to the boss, in which case QJ's position on the upper left would resolve the tiebreak. By not moving around unnecessarily with the dolls you don't want to be targeted by the boss, you're making your life easier. Now that it's the boss's turn, you'll find that there's not much else you need to be mindful of. It starts with a single target attack against the closest doll, then continues with an attack against the doll with the highest attack on the team, applying defense down 2, then proceeding with a single target attack against the farthest doll, and finally concluding with an attack that hits both the closest and farthest dolls while applying movement down 2. None of these attacks matter, and the rest of the team sits idly by. However, there's one more detail that's relevant. Let's rewind a few seconds to the moment Terrace's counterattacks break the boss's stability. In this moment, before the final attack, Lewis received a second stack of the buff, now granting 10% bonus attack. In total, there are 3 methods of gaining the buff/debuff. The boss will apply it automatically to the farthest doll on even numbered rounds, including at the start of the battle. Then, it will also apply it when its stability breaks. And lastly, as you've seen before, it will apply to the nearest doll when the shield stacks are removed completely. So, within the first round, Lewis being the farthest doll received 2 stacks, while Tololo being the closest sits at 1 stack. Now that the boss is stability broken and doesn't immediately reapply the shield stacks to itself, there's nothing much happening on the team's second turn, so we'll skip ahead to the end of turn 2. We're entering the boss's turn with the same positioning as before. This round, the boss starts with a new single target attack directed at the nearest doll. If the doll has a special buff/debuff, it will apply a 10% vulnerability to the boss, stacking up to 3 times. Notice the debuffs on the boss as we zoom in. After the attack concludes, the boss receives a stack of the vulnerability debuff. The boss will use this attack every other round, so the 30% vulnerability is maxed out at the earliest at the end of turn 6. The next 2 attacks you're already familiar with, and they don't do anything meaningful. Lastly, the boss ends his turn by reapplying 4 stacks of the shield buff. Since there are now at least 2 dolls with the special buff, it shouldn't be much of an issue to get rid of these quickly. Note that Lewis received the 3rd and final stack of the buff at the same time as the boss reapplied the shield stacks to itself. She now benefits from a 15% attack bonus, and in principle you can start to have another doll take over the role as he furthers from the boss to gain stacks from stability break or the next cast of the shield skill. Here, QJ moves 1 tile away from the boss. Her movement range is currently heavily limited, so this is not enough to take over the role from Lewis. They are in a tiebreak, so Lewis being the support character still has priority. This is only a problem for a character like QJ that acts first, before any of the movement reduction stacks have been removed. If you're using the same lineup, you could anticipate this by moving to this position 1 turn earlier. As Lewis's attack shreds the last stacks of the boss shield, you can see that another stack of the 25% defense reduction debuff was applied, now reducing the boss's defense by 50% in total. As you hopefully remember, this also means a second stack of the attack buff for Tolo. This occurs upon shield removal for the closest doll to the boss. The boss has a total of 175 stability, so breaking it takes some effort, here occurring again only during the boss's turn thanks to the V6 Springfield's counterattacks. The attacks on round 3 are the same as on round 1, so there's nothing new happening. At the moment of the stability break, another stack of the attack buff is given to Lewis, but this one is wasted because she is already maxed out. If QJ had more movement range during her turn, or moved in advance, she could have taken over this one. With the final attack that targets the nearest and farthest doll, you can indeed verify that Lewis is still considered farthest from the boss, even though QJ has the same distance and the priority position on the upper left. Again, this only happens because Lewis is the support character in this match. On round 4, QJ is able to move another tile so that the tiebreak is resolved. From now on, she is treated as the farthest doll from the boss, allowing her to gain the attack bonus as well. That is pretty much all there is to see. On round 4, the boss repeats the actions from round 2, starting with the attack targeting the nearest doll, which increases its vulnerability stacks assuming the doll is affected by the special buff. Here, it gains a second stack for 20% vulnerability. At the end of its turn, the shield stacks are reapplied, and QJ receives the first stack of the attack buff/root. Since the rest of the match is more of the same, we'll jump ahead to the final round. Here, you see 3 stacks of the attack buff on Lewis, as well as on QJ, who've shared the role as the farthest dolls in this match. Tolo remained the closest throughout the fight, also at 3 stacks. Thus, all of the damage dealers on the team benefit from a 15% attack bonus and bypass the damage reduction from the boss's shield stacks. In total, the boss is affected by 75% defense reduction and 30% vulnerability. So long as your initial setup makes the appropriate placements, there's not much you can mess up. Don't move around with the dolls that aren't supposed to get the buff, and try to switch the farthest position as soon as your first doll maxes out the stacks. I believe that strategy is easy enough to follow, though it's not very autoplay friendly. Before we conclude, let's briefly talk some general team building advice for this boss. The team setups from Voimastina's patch are more or less the same, only with Lainey, Helen and Fetusa as new potential options. Ideally, you want a setup with a character in the farthest position who is able to shred 4 stacks within a round, while avoiding the root on characters with skills that require movement. Voimastina is especially well suited for this boss. Aside from the free defense reduction that helps her break negative defense thresholds, she is immune to movement debuffs. Therefore, she can stack up the attack buff without the downside of getting rooted in place. You start her in the farthest position and subsequently let her assume the nearest position via support actions. Afterwards, you need another character to assume the farthest position from the boss. On the physical team, this could be anyone but Ulrut, since she needs to be within melee range and requires movement for her ultimate. If you mix the physical with the electric core, you could designate Leva to take the buff in the farthest position after Voimastina. On the electric team, Jangyu is also a good candidate due to her high hit count, but Leva takes priority for the attack buff. On the Corrosion team, you want to avoid the route on Kluke and Fetusa as they need movement to execute their abilities. Petya is best for the job due to her many support actions, though the attack buff feels like a waste on her. Lind is able to take off 3 stacks of the boss's shield within the first round, which is not ideal, but still good enough. If you don't run Petya, Michty is fine as an alternative, assuming you're not going Sustainless with a Voimastina as a flex pick. The Burn team or Hydro Burn mixed lineups have good candidates for the buff. Lewis, as you've seen, works well since her Tin Soldiers and her S2 take off the boss's shield stacks within the same turn. QJ and Chakri also work perfectly fine so long as you reliably trigger enough support actions. Avoid getting the route on Chiro or Sakura since they need movement to execute theirs too. If you run a mix with Trollo and / or Nikita, they are fine to assume the frontal position. The Mono Freeze team needs a lot of investment to do well, but pretty much anyone besides Helen can take the route. In any case, that should do it for this one. For a full team building overview, I refer you to my previous boss guide, which includes the characters up to Voimastina's release. I'm sure you're able to fill in the 3 new characters without my help. Since we have the Blade Titan for the next 3 patches, here's also an overview from your Tempest. We're still missing Lorelei and Cheyenne to complete some of these teams, but assuming they release next, you'll have a reference to peek at. As usual, I conclude by wishing you the best of luck in obtaining your personal high score. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.